Survivor's ready!
Direct from Hobart, it's time for you to hear those so-called experts from Survivor Oz talk about another reality show, despite the fact they always said they wouldn't ever talk about Survivor. It's The Amazing Race Oz, and here's your host,
Colin Hilding.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Amazing Race Oz, minus Noah Groves or Noah Graves, however you pronounce it. You're a part of the world. We're here to talk about episode 10 of The Amazing Race Season 27 US version. And I don't have the episode title in front of me. Does anybody else have it? Do you want to save me from this awkward moment?
Something about cheese.
Cheese sneezes and chasing a record, or green U-turns paparazzi, something like that. We'll find out the episode
Bring the
title.
groom and the fun, or something like that, probably.
Yeah, we'll get a confirmation before I'm done this very sentence that I'm speaking right now. Bring the fun, baby.
Oh, I was close.
Episode 10 of The Amazing Race, Season 27. And if you haven't noticed, I'm joined again for the second week in a row, which is a record for him this season. Again, welcome back to Anthony Rossi.
Yay. No Noah. Win-win.
There's really a running theme here, where if Noah's not here, Rossi is. So, all of you Rossi fans out there, just find a way to get Noah Groves, or Noah Graves, however you pronounce it, off of The Amazing Race, and then you'll hear more of Anthony Rossi.
We can't get rid of the host, because no one else is going to fill in.
Yeah, well, except for me. But,
You're a special host.
I'm pretty sure at this point I've recorded more this season than Noah has, so let's call him the part-time host for Season 27. We're also welcomed again by, accompanied by his army of dogs and birds and lawnmowers and possibly emus from Emu Plains. Jared Lubick, you are back for the second week in a row.
Yep, back to back, with the ruckus of everything going on around me. Who knows how this will go.
And this is the crew, so 2 weeks in a row. What were the odds on this? That it would be the exact same three guys 2 weeks in a row with the exact same pets and everything?
No new pets in the last week, anyone?
I have a hamster which you will not be able to hear unless it just starts aggressively squealing in the background. Which it doesn't. But I have a wife who will either sneeze or cough in the middle of this episode. So if you hear either of those, as always, let us know and we will send you an autographed CD of Fatty Esther.
Send us some get well Jamie tweets if you're listening.
Yeah, all of you out there, Jamie, my wife, who you've heard sneeze in many episodes of this show, is a little bit under the weather right now. And if you do feel so inclined, send a get well Jamie, or send her flowers, or just send us money. We'll accept anything. She's yelling chocolate in the background if nobody heard that. All of your well wishes here so that Jamie doesn't die by the end of the season. And we are here to talk about this episode. So we're covering for the first time in who knows how long a single episode, because there is no non-elimination after an elimination. It was kind of a nice change of pace, I have to say, just right off the bat, having those. We didn't really talk that much in the last episode, but we basically had 3 back-to-back non-elimination days. Not that there were 3 back-to-back non-eliminations, but it went non-elimination, eliminate, non-elimination, eliminate. Therefore, we had 3 double episodes. So before we even get into the episode, a little bit of a different format this season. Rossi, do you like it better this way than the way they've staggered it in the past? And also kind of taking a page out of the Amazing Race Canada's book, more so a legs are continuing and really only 1 non-elimination the whole season. So how did you feel about how those were structured this season?
It's interesting. It felt weird, like having the continue racing really helps. It just keeps the pace going. And I think non-eliminations are good, and unlike Noah, who wants them gone or banished from Amazing Race lore, I think they're good. But this latter part of the season has been picking up a lot, especially with the U-turns and the eliminations one after another. So I definitely see it ending off pretty quick.
Jared, how do you feel about the non-eliminations this season? An improvement over past ones?
Definitely, I think so. I think it's a lot better to just have a continue racing leg. I don't think they've exactly perfected it yet because I hate when the continue racing legs happen and then the next leg they all bunch up again. I think that's a big mistake. But yeah, I definitely prefer that to a non-elimination leg, and then you have less problems with things like speed bumps being unfair or being too easy, so it just eliminates kind of that whole issue.
Yeah, I like it a lot better this way. Just like with the Amazing Race Canada this season, I thought they had a great way of handling getting the max amount of episodes out, having non-eliminations without actually making them non-eliminations. Like you said, eliminating speed bumps is a great thing too. We had obviously the speed bump in the last episode, which cost us Tanner and Josh. So we didn't really. I'm gonna edit this out later. But what are you talking about, Rossi? Talk up the speed bump twist?
Oh,
you mean
the fact that it wasn't a speed bump, it was just the detour roadblock twice.
Yeah. Oh, we kind of mentioned it, but not really. But hey, let's cover it while we're here now. I guess I'm not editing it out. So that was not a mistake that we left in something we're supposed to. Last episode, we had the roadblock. So again, I'm going to get opinions. I wanted to get opinions in the last episode, but we'll do it on this one on how we're finding this season compared to the last couple. But another twist they had was instead of the speed bump, the double roadblock. And we mentioned a little bit in the last episode, but Rossi, do you like it better this way, or do you think that it needs a little bit more work?
It definitely needs to be tweaked. However, it's a big improvement from the speed bump. Because I'm just like thinking about past speed bumps. Eat ice cream, or someone's tire.
Sit down in a sauna. Sit on a nice chair. Just sit down in general.
Like things that are so simple that they finally like, all right, we need to step it up. So they stepped it up, but they went from like 1 to 10. They need to go tweak it back a little. It's like, It's way too intense. Like that challenge was like brutal. Like in the hot sun, like shifting laundry across the sand. That was too intense. Like they need to tone it back. But otherwise, I think it's a really good way of like getting that last team to actually fight to win, to fight to stay in.
Yeah, and I was fully anticipating the speed bump to be something like, look at your Fitbit and tell us what it says. That's all they would have done. So, even though it was really tough, it was nice to have. Jared, you mentioned this a little bit last week, I think, about how it was a little bit too much. But do you like the change again, this twist as well as the nominations this year? Is it improving the show at all?
I think it's a definite improvement. Like Rossi said, I think it needs a bit more tweaking. My favorite, method will always be the team that finishes last has to come first in the next leg, otherwise they get a time penalty. I think that's a good one. But I'm fine with them just continuously kind of changing it up until they find something that works really well. It needs to be a punishment that you came last, but it can't be so much that automatically you've lost the next leg and you've got no chance of staying in the race.
The other thing I think that's more, I'm not going to say it's a twist, but a bit of a format change this year is the fact that we've had very storyline-based seasons. And I was complaining about this earlier in the season. I can't remember which episode it was in, where I felt like it was taking up too much time, where there was all this talk at the beginning of the episode. We kind of have that again. It's starting to grow on me a little bit. I mean, this time we really had two things set up here. One, that Logan and Chris or three things set up. Logan and Chris are the new adversaries, which we all predicted in the last episode. The whole thing with the U-turn gate, if we want to call it that, with Tiffany and Krista, kind of turned Logan and Chris into the new enemies for the green team. Also, we have Kelsey and Joey, who are now being set up with their storyline. They're the perpetual second placers, which is, I think, exactly what Nick and Matt were on the Amazing Race Canada this past season. And finally, again, we mentioned it last week. It was mentioned on the show, and it's really profiled heavily this week. Justin's chasing this record of beating the record of 8 number 1 finishes on a leg. They're at 6 already going into this episode. And what I really liked was the Diana, just the difference between the two of them. He's like, we got this many to go with the record. And Diana's like, I don't care if we get this record. I'm chasing the win. So he's chasing a record. She's chasing a win. 3 teams out of, 5 that are left. And within 5 minutes, we have their storylines and their story arcs set up. We could talk about just these 3 as a whole, and also just the whole season. Rossi, the storylines that we're getting this season. Is this an improvement, or do they still have work to do on this? Is it taking a little bit too much away from the race?
It's tricky because I'd rather them focus on the storylines if the challenges are going to be weak. but the challenges have been pretty solid consistently, and I think they've been generally like on point. So it's a bit tricky because I want these storylines because they're nice and they're good and they're well edited, but I also think the challenges are good because they're challenging, and so I want both, but I'm missing out on both because they're like not, instead of focusing on one, they're focusing on both at the same time, so we're getting less of what we normally would get from both. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that we all expected, because this is kind of new, we don't get a lot of this whole foreshadowing. We all expected early in the season when there was all this talk about Tanner and Josh and U-turning that was exactly how the season was going to come down to. And of course the U-turn thing between Tanner and Josh and the green team never ended up happening. It almost was like a setup for something that didn't happen. I think that's fooled us a little bit into thinking that everything they mentioned with storylines is going to come out. Jared, the 3 storylines we had set up this week, the Logan and Chris as the adversaries, Kelsey and Joey always being stuck in second place, Justin chasing the record. Do you think all 3 of these things are going to play out, or is this maybe a little bit of trickery too, that it's going to be a storyline that gets cut short and it's just a way to fool the audience?
It's hard to say. I think there's potential for things to come true and others not to. I think the Kelsey and Joey storyline of always being second, I kind of feel like maybe that's where they'll stay and they're not going to sort of get that big win. But I mean, other storylines, you're just waiting for them to happen. They don't seem to be happening. I mean, we've seen kind of this built-up storyline of everybody wanting to topple the green team throughout the entire race, and it just hasn't happened yet. So you kind of wonder if that's going to happen at all. But I think it's definitely a step in the right direction for the race to have kind of these storylines going throughout the season, week to week, because I don't think this season it was necessary, but I think if you have a poor season, like the last season, and the legs aren't interesting, and there's no suspense in who's going home and what's going to end up happening, then to have the viewers invested in the storyline, then at least they're sort of going to be coming back week to week, even if the legs themselves aren't the best.
Yeah, and that's a good setup for something I'll mention later on, as I already alluded to. We're going to kind of compare seasons at the end of this, because I think that I'm very split on these seasons, and I am liking a lot of the changes they're making, and some of them are positive, but there's still something about this season I'm not sure is clicking yet, but we'll debate a little bit near the end. These are the 3 storylines. The challenges this week, I think this is a good episode of something where something doesn't click, but something does work. The challenges this week, let's be honest, we saw somebody filling balloons and riding a bike. We saw cranking up a generator and parking a little ride and walking somebody down the aisle. I mean, on the surface, these, I think, would have been some of the most boring challenges we've ever seen, unless we have a disagreement from anybody. Rossi, Jared, do either of you care for these challenges as a whole? Were these fun to watch? No? Rossi?
I'm trying to think back of all the challenges this season and see if there's anything.
I think the
worse.
long pause is my answer.
Maybe the slide puzzle from episode 1, or the helicopter ride from episode 1, maybe the weakest. I don't know.
Well, let's be honest. The slide puzzle, they put them into skimpy bathing suits, so they knew that it was going to be boring, but they had to do something to fix it. But that's kind of my point. These challenges would have sucked in any other episode, but the environment really saved it, and the chaos of India. And I always love the episode take place in India, but I find that even when the Amazing Race Canada went to India this past time, we sort of always seen it. There's always something interesting going on in the background. I remember talking about that in the Canadian one. But this one, the fact that it mostly took place at night was really interesting, and the teams mentioned that this time. This episode, I really felt the environment was sold. The location sold everything. And even though they're just filling balloons, I mean, I like these challenges. So let's talk a little bit about the challenges and India's location this week. Rossi, we have filling balloons. We have the whole wedding processional thing, the generator, and just India as a whole. What did you feel about this week?
The biggest thing I took away from this was the fact that it was at night. Like, that was the coolest thing. I thought, like, we never see teams at night. It's usually, you have to wait till morning because that's not open. But they kind of themed the episode around a wedding, which I thought was really interesting to see, like, an episode theme. But it worked well. I think yeah, the challenges may have seemed silly, like deliver the balloons, and even if you don't have the balloons when you get there, you still pass.
Yeah.
So I thought some of the bits were kind of weird and odd, but I thought it worked well, especially the fact that it was at night and everyone's like, I can't see, I don't know where I'm going. Kind of craziness worked well.
Jared, the challenges this week and the environment. Does the environment sell the challenges?
I think it does to an extent. They definitely just felt lackluster, and I think what stood out was that there just wasn't many challenges either. I mean, you had kind of the roadblock and the detour, and that was it. There was no kind of in-between little bits, kind of route info challenges that they had to do, and everything was kind of just point A to point B. I suppose, yeah, it was really the environment of just, we're going to get you on the streets as much as possible, in amongst the traffic, in amongst the hustle and bustle, and it's going to be stressful, and I suppose that's what they were really going for. But I think watching it, it was kind of just, to me, it felt lackluster the whole leg, and there was those little annoying things like delivering the balloons and not having them, and then I thought for sure, I was like, she's going to have to go all the way back and start this again, and then that was just fine for some reason. Yeah, so I thought overall it was just a bit of a meh leg.
See, I actually wasn't sure if it was just me on this episode, because I'll be honest, I woke up at about 1:30 in the morning, couldn't get back to sleep, so I was watching this at 2 in the morning. I've already been kind of sleep deprived the last couple of days or whatever, and I was just kind of miserable watching the challenges in this episode. But the more I thought about it after I did get back to sleep and woke up, I really liked the environment enough. But I think I'm completely on board. These challenges were a little bit messed up. The balloon one especially, you both mentioned it. Let's talk about that a little bit. We're so used to these judges being very harsh. And filling up these balloons, I mean, it definitely took a lot of patience and everything. But I remember the first team, one of the earlier teams that crossed, I don't remember who it was. I saw, as they were riding the bike, one of the balloons float out of the back. And I remember thinking at that point, like, gasping, like, oh, they're not going to even realize that they have to redo this challenge. And then they get there and it's fine. And then, of course, who was it that had all of them gone? Was that Tiffany and Krista?
Vanessa.
Yep.
Yeah, Vanessa, as you call them. Like, every single balloon's gone. And the guy just smiles and hands it to them. Now, I thought he was handing it to them because, like, hey, cheerleader, you did great, right? But we saw the same thing happen, I think it was with Denise and James Earl. The judges were very easy on them in this episode, and maybe, again, this is just something where the environment is so harsh that they were kind of understanding, but I don't know, I would have liked this a lot better if they rode back and they counted the balloons. They're like, you're missing one. And they either have to go and find it floating on the road somewhere, or go back and, fill up one more balloon, but yeah, either way, I think the chaos of the environment did help this episode. Especially, I didn't even see what happened. Like, was it even clear what happened with, I can't remember if it was Tiffany or Krista, where the guy clipped her and they all started popping? Like, I didn't even see it happen. Maybe I was just too tired at the time. Rossi, did you catch it?
I noted her saying they were pulling on the bag or cutting it or doing something. And then all of a sudden we have that really awkward camera shot of the camera mounted on her bike, staring at her uncomfortable face. Like, so I don't really know what happened.
Jared, did you actually see what happened there?
It was kind of hard to pick up. I think she was talking about how somebody purposely ripped the net, which I was like, I don't know if somebody was just going to intentionally like grab onto it and rip it. I think that it was probably just traffic going past that kind of split the net open. But I mean, that's just typical, like Tiffany and Krista. Every time something goes wrong, it's like the world is out to get them. And why is this happening to us? And this always happens to us, and everybody's out to get us, and they hate us. It's not fair.
They underestimate us.
It's just my life. It's too hard.
Cheerleaders can't ride bikes, is what they're all saying.
So, I mean, that was a little bit over the top. But yeah, I think there was just passing traffic that caught onto the side of the net. I mean, the nets seemed to be that flimsy in the first place, because I think it was Logan who just kept putting balloons into the net and they were just falling out the other side. So I think obviously they probably had holes in them to start off with.
Mm-hmm. It was great to watch anyways, just one pop right after the other and her just freaking out. I think that was a highlight. Tiffany and Krista, again, I mentioned this last week, I think, or even the last couple weeks, that the more they fail, the more I like them. It all goes back to Jared's great quote about it takes a special team to suck that bad. There are those teams like Tiffany and Krista where when they're kind of off their game, that's when I think they're interesting. So I would like to see them fail a little bit more going forward. Let's just see them fall flat on their face every week. But it's not a bad thing. It's not that I'm rooting for them to lose, but it's just I think they're good reactors. That's what it is more than anything. Whether you agree with them or not, we're making fun of them. It's like everybody's out to get us, but they react, and a lot of other teams don't. So I'm hoping that they get a couple of more freakouts along the way, spaz sessions with Tiffany and Krista. I don't even know where this was in my notes, but at some point I noticed that there was talk. If this was just in the confessionals earlier in their episode, or maybe at the pit stop, talk of marriage with Logan and Chris. We kind of joked about this last week, but whether they could be like 5 years down the road this happily married couple. But it wasn't just them, it was the reporters too. Like, we had two separate teams talking about the potential of marriage, and I'm just having these flashbacks. Like, was there some field producer who this is his first day back since season 26 and he still thinks it's love connection race or something? But it's just seemed kind of awkward to me that we have all these teams, which, paparazzi and reporters, both in the same line of work, I guess, and they're talking marriage again. Fun season 26 moment. Let's just give predictions while we're at it. Logan and Chris, let's give odds 1 out of 100. Rossi, what are the odds 1 out of 100 that they will end up married and happy together?
Ooh. Let me think. So, 42.
42. Wow, that's good. Jared, odds 1 out of 100 that Logan and Chris end up happily married.
I think they're quite high, actually. I'd say maybe like 80. I just think they're the type of people who kind of thrive on fighting with each other and getting on each other's nerves, and that's kind of their way of showing affection to each other, is just niggling the other one and just sending them off the deep end. And so I think that relationship kind of works with like two volatile people.
Now, every listener is going to have this image now of Logan and Chris just in these heated arguments and all of a sudden making wild, passionate love to each other as they're bickering. You two have really set them up high here. Yeah, I was going to say I'd give them maybe a 1 out of 100 chance that they finish the race even speaking on speaking terms, but maybe you two are onto something. Let's talk about the other one. The reporters, Kelsey and Joey, everybody's favorite. Mr. Rape Whistle hat-wearing Joey. What are their chances, 1 out of 100, that they end up married? Let's play Love Connection with Phil here. Rossi.
Can you repeat that?
1 out of 100, Kelsey and Joey end up happily married.
Oh, 100.
100 out of 100. Jared?
Yeah, I'm going to agree here, 100. I mean, they're sort of the perfect couple, gearing up for the next All-Star Amazing Race season, All-Star Newlyweds.
Yeah, and when they show up for the first episode, guaranteed I'll be like, who are Kelsey and Joey again? Nothing against Kelsey and Joey. I just have trouble remembering them for some reason. It's helping to see... Did you change... Okay, we talked about last week. You have them as your profile pick, Rossi. Did you change that as your profile pick just to jog my memory?
No, just to express my undying love for the best team.
You also had undying love for Hamilton Michaela on the Amazing Race Canada, so I don't know if this is the best club to be in.
It is a great club. A club of great teams.
Joey and Megan, Michaela and Hamilton.
Yeah, I do not love Joey and Megan.
Well, you had them, didn't you?
I think they're a good team.
Wrote the article? You wrote the article on them, didn't you?
Yeah, they were there.
They were there. You got enough criticism that now you're playing down. I was like, oh, that wasn't me. That was Noah. Noah's not here to defend himself. Susan and Sharn.
Not my club.
We all love them. Yeah.
Maybe Noah's club, but not mine.
Noah's club. All right, so let's move on here. We have the U-turn, which it was a little bit odd that the U-turn was placed before you even get to the detour. So another small twist for the season. I can't remember off the top of my head if this has been done before, but do we like the teams knowing they have to do both detours going in? Rossi?
I kind of like the mid, I guess, I don't know, like after you finish one, then you go to this point and then you find out if you're U-turned or not, just because I think it works better because then you're like extra exhausted. You're like, I put all my energy into this and now I have to do the other one. I think the the drama in finding out, like the team finding out that they were U-turned is extra dramatic when they're extra tired. And like it was right at the beginning of the episode that we saw that they were U-turned. It wasn't dramatic.
Yeah. Jared, which way do you like better?
Definitely kind of the normal way that it's afterwards. I think it works better. I think I'm not entirely sure on the rules, but then if you can't U-turn somebody, I don't know, before you do the challenge or whatnot, I just think it works better if they've already done a challenge and they come back and, like Rossi said, they're exhausted and then they're shocked and there's just so much more emotion than, oh, damn it, we've been U-turned, we better hurry and do both. I think it kind of throws into question more where you are in relation to other teams as well. Like, I mean, Logan and Chris knew that they were in kind of third place at that point in time, so they knew that they had a bit of a buffer. Whereas if they'd come back from a challenge, kind of had no idea where everyone else was and had to do the other challenge straight afterwards, I think it kind of puts a bit more pressure on them.
This is another thing that I'll bring up a little bit at the end when we talk about how this season's comparing, because I am noticing, especially in the last couple of weeks, how many things they're making small tweaks to, which is all the more disappointing when we're going to kind of announce what the twist is for next season. But yeah, I mean, I again like this idea on paper. It needs a bit of work. It does drain all of the tension out of it, because like you said, Rossi, it's great just to see somebody so drained and they have to find out that they have to go back. But if we're being perfectly honest, teams that have been U-turned like that, they pretty much are already out of the race at that point. So we get that great reaction from them, but there's no tension. One thing I did like is I think this allowed for them in the episode to create a little bit more tension, because the teams know they have to rush through this. Maybe they're going to play it a little bit differently. Maybe they won't, but it at least allows for the edit a little bit more, that you don't have that last minute reveal. So as an audience member, you're waiting. Okay, well, they haven't been shown that they are U-turned yet. But if we're going to talk about the U-turn right now, let's talk about the choice from Justin and Diana to U-turn here. Now, again, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is something we talked about. Maybe it's something that we heard on the race. But I'm pretty sure when there was all that talk earlier in the season about Tanner and Josh wanting to U-turn the green team, was it not Justin and Diana themselves who were on camera saying, you don't U-turn a team who's at the front? Correct me if I'm wrong on that. But does anybody else remember that, Rossi?
I'm not sure.
Jared?
Yeah, I think they definitely said something along those lines about not U-turning a team at the front, because I think they said, why U-turn us, because we're just going to survive it anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, obviously, maybe if they didn't say this, then that's fine. Justin and Diana, I'm not sure if you're listening. We know they have listened to and replied to us before, so if you are listening, back us up if you did not say that earlier. But to play devil's advocate again for Justin and Diana, because I think they do get some unfair criticism, whether they said that or not, I think the difference is they pumped it up. Justin and Diana are calling to confirm this. Who has the confirmation on that? But I think the difference is that they pumped this up. This is like a third U-turn. We've never had 3. So you're guaranteeing at this point, if you do U-turn somebody, they're not going to come back and get you later on. Maybe that was the rationalization. But at the same time, I was thinking the whole episode, I'm like, they're U-turning Logan and Chris. Maybe it's because they're taking it personally with everything that happened last week or I don't know if it was last week, technically in the last 2-parter we saw. But it seemed like maybe it was just a little bit too personal of a choice, because I don't know if that was the smart idea. I mean, Logan and Chris were definitely a strong enough team just as a whole that they were going to fight back from this. Especially Justin and Diana, they must have known at this point, we haven't done one part of it yet, so they're going to know going in. So, good idea or bad idea, Rossi?
It's so tricky. That placement really throws it off.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a bad. I wouldn't U-turn based on the placement.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all I have to say. I don't know. It's tricky.
I mean, I'm kind of surprised the first place team would want to U-turn anybody, especially a first place team that's now heading into their 7th, win in a row, and their 5th back-to-back, I think. Jared, do you have any additional opinion on this? Good idea or bad idea?
I don't think it was particularly smart or terrible on their part. I didn't think that they were going to U-turn anybody based on kind of the past couple of ones where they got there early and they just said, we choose not to U-turn anybody. But I suppose at this point, so late in the race, when you know that it's not going to come up again, it's not a terrible idea because it's going to be hard for another team to sort of get back at you. But I think in terms of choices, it's definitely personal because Logan and Chris, I mean, they've done okay, but surely they're not on the top of your hit list in terms of threats.
One thing to consider, is that since it's placed before the U-turn, the detour, is whether or not like how the challenges end up, because one factor that the normal U-turns have is that you know what the challenges are, and you can kind of play it to see who would mess up in a certain area. So maybe if they knew Logan was allergic to fish, and there was a fish challenge or something like that, you know? So, like, Justin and Dan are kind of doing a blind U-turn, really, because they don't know what's coming up ahead. Mm-hmm. It could literally be fold a piece of paper or throw a rock, and those could be the two challenges.
Yeah, see, I mean, again, especially for a team that chose not to U-turn earlier on, it was a little bit odd, but like I said, I see it from both sides if they're figuring, well, this is a good opportunity to get somebody out who's maybe causing trouble, but like you said, Jared, I mean, Logan and Chris, they've finished in the top. If you're looking at top half versus bottom half, they barely scrape into either. They're kind of just on the verge of the top half or just on the verge of the bottom half every week. I mean, their best placing was third place, and that was when there were only 6 teams, and that was, last week. So they're not that strong of a team where, you'd really be gunning for them. If they're gunning for anybody, gun for Kelsey and Joey. Obviously, there was some deal with them, but I would lean more towards bad decision. But yeah, I still think there's promise with having the thing placed ahead of the U-turn. It's a more interesting idea. It might create a more suspenseful episode. I don't know if we have that much to talk about, but the whole detour thing, I mean, we have the wedding stuff going on. More than the challenge itself, I thought it was kind of cool, again, just the environment and everything being placed at night, which, like you said, Rossi, very different. But do you have anything to add on these detours?
I thought Rossi? It was pretty fun. Just the whole prospect of going. I didn't realize at first that they had to get to this wedding. I thought it was 2 different places or something. Mm-hmm. And apparently this one woman has many husbands or something because they keep delivering the groom. Like 4 teams delivered this groom.
Yeah.
But I thought it was fun, especially when the last clue was find Phil at the party. The teams are like, is he in this Ferris wheel? Like, where is he? Is he the groom? Like, things like that was pretty funny. So I thought the theme really added to it, to some lackluster challenges.
Denise and James Earl somehow find themselves back in the garden from the previous episode.
They go back in time.
There's another thing. I mean, I like the whole find Phil thing, where it's a little bit tougher to find him. Again, we talked about in season 26, it's like, well, he's around the corner. All right, there he is. You know, he's standing right in front of you. But Jared, anything to add on these detours, the Indian weddings?
I think Logan and Chris were definitely the stars of the detours. I think the amount that they fight is just perfect, and it's so good because early in the season, to me, they were the most bland team in the entire race, and I just wanted them gone. And as soon as they started fighting, they kind of added value to the season. So I love their quote of when they're at the rides and they're trying to get kids on, they're like, no kids are like going to come on the ride because we're just evil people and we fight all the time and they hate us. And then just them kind of, oh yes, we love the kids and we just pushed them longer than we had to and blah blah blah, sort of like trying to save their image was great. They're just a good team. I did like that Phil was at the end, that they both detours finished in the same spot and Phil was there, which I suppose in a way then that makes sense in terms of having the U-turn beforehand. Having the U-turn before the challenges, since they both ended at the pit stop, it makes sense to have it there instead of having a team do a challenge and then kind of be at the end but then have to go all the way back to another challenge. So yeah, I thought that was really well done.
Yeah, and I'm going to say the most hilarious moment of the week was Chris, continue to push this thing and Logan saying, no, you got to stop here, Again, like we talked about this every single week, I really see both sides, that these two people are always pushing each other's buttons, but this was definitely kind of embarrassing to watch. They were sweating. I don't think I've ever seen somebody sweat as bad as, not just them, all the teams in this race. Like, this was nighttime, and it just looked brutal on these guys. I liked the whole Indian wedding thing. As I said, I didn't really like the challenges, but Overall, there were some funny moments. And again, I'm just going to say, Tiffany and Krista, they're so funny sometimes just when they're clueless, but then there's other times where they seem brilliant but don't understand it. They still don't understand the U-turn when they showed up, and they're like, oh, one of them was like, oh, Logan and Chris were U-turned by the green team. And then I was like, no, wait. Like, she got all excited. It's like, no, wait. It was, they got so confused by this. It's like, I don't know if anybody explained to them going in what a U-turn was. I almost want more U-turns just to see how they can fumble through them.
They did one. How do they not know?
I know, and they did one very unsuccessfully. Let's U-turn a team that already passed us an hour ago. All right, so we've talked about all the teams at length here. You know, we're down to only a few teams. We'll cover just one team right here, and obviously this was just not the week for Denise and James Earl. They've been another one of those teams that I think is surprising they've made it this far, but you mentioned how much I'll let you go first on this, Jared, because you mentioned, at least in the past, that they were one of your favorite teams. Parting comments on Denise and James Earl.
Definitely my favorite team this season. I think Denise is just brilliant. I would watch her on any reality show. They weren't as much as a train wreck as I thought coming into the season, and they held their own. I mean, they won a leg, which was a big surprise. So definitely hoping that we see them back on some type of returnee season later on.
They not only finished first in a leg, because you always get that one team where maybe they have that, like, obviously I think with theirs it came down to the Express Pass, but just looking at it right now, they finished third in 3 legs. And two of them were very early in the race. So yeah, they were way more. I don't even think I realized how good they've done this whole time. And I agree with you. I mean, Denise is definitely a star. Rossi, Denise, and James Earl.
Quick question: what were their finishing things?
Their placings?
Yeah, like over the legs.
Okay, in order, they went 4th, 3rd, 6th, 3rd, 1st, 7, 6, 3, 5, and 5, which is their elimination. So they actually, I think, did better in the first half of the race than the second half.
Okay. Anyway, just wondering. Yeah, they were good. They were surprising. Like, I thought they'd be like, Denise couldn't handle running around the race. She's got this small backpack. She's like struggling to carry the load or whatever and can't keep up. But she surprised me, and their teamwork was really successful. I was shocked about how well they worked together. I thought they'd butt heads more. Maybe not like Logan and Chris level, but just a bit. Maybe like Justin Diana level, maybe. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed them. Out of all the teams left, they were second least favorite. So, not too sad to see them go.
I love that you have a list somewhere of your least favorite teams. They were second least favorite.
Well, out of the 5 left, they're like second.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that they were definitely more interesting in the first half, and that's probably just because we saw more of them. They were doing better, and maybe they were having more fun. The one thing that I noticed was that there definitely seemed to be a loss in how much fun they were having after that first place leg. James Earl especially, I can't really think about any great James Earl moments from the second half they had in the race. So, do we have hashtags on them? Rossi, do you have one?
Go to Jared first.
Jared, do you have a hashtag?
Hashtag Supermom and Spud.
Rossi, can you top it?
Oh, that was a good one. Hashtag Potato Mom and Son for life.
I really just like the comparison early on. I can't remember who it was that made it, so I'm just going to go hashtag Bates Motel, because they definitely have that Norma and Norman Bates thing going on. But I agree with you. They got to come back. They're one of the few teams, even though I don't think we got to see enough of them this season. They're one of the ones that have been hurt by all these rivalries. But we talked about throughout the episode. Let's just talk right now. Season 27 as a whole. Before we get into it, let's just say Season 28 coming up, which I believe has already started filming. The twist is not something that I think anybody's really thrilled about, but basically Season 28 is going to be all teams that... Rossi, you're right. The TMZ one's the one that brought it up. Which, let's talk about TMZ. It's going to be all people who are, social media stars, basically. So maybe they have a YouTube channel like Joey and Megan. Maybe they have a lot of followers on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, but it just seems like such an odd twist, and maybe it's something to avoid spoilers, or maybe, again, they're just trying to improve ratings. Let's get people who are going to have fans. Like, obviously, if this person has 2 million followers, let's, I don't think any of them will have 2 million, but let's say they do, then we'll get some new viewers. Probably just a ratings grab. Seems like a really cheesy idea, and I think you're going to get a lot of very similar type of personalities on here. Before we talk about this season, quick opinions on season 28 coming up. Rossi?
I'm excited. I think these things keep this show fresh. And it doesn't seem too outlandish like the blind dating twist. It doesn't change any format. It's just a different kind of casting, and I think that's fine. I mean, I hope it's not the same kind of people. It's not like all the Valley Girls and all the jocks or anything like that. So without that, I hope it's good, but we'll see.
Jared, are you optimistic at all about this?
Potentially. I'm glad that there's four teams that are like family relationships, because I mean they're the teams I usually go for. The only concern I have is how much the teams are going to play up to the camera, and like that's just, I feel like that's not going to feel real and authentic. But hopefully, just the stress of the race will kind of break down that pretense, and they'll just, I suppose, be themselves and not kind of play up to the cameras too much.
Yeah, I think, again, on paper, it just looks like such a dumb idea. But I was saying the same thing about Season 26. And Season 26 is weird because I even said we finished it, I consider it a bottom 5 season. But strangely enough, this will kind of segue into what I was talking about. I really like the cast of Season 26. And I think let's just take a quick second to compare Season 26 to Season 27. Rossi, you go first. I'll let you go before even I give my opinion here. But your feelings from 26 to 27, are there improvements that have been made, or what things are you missing, or are both of them just completely waste of time at this point?
Well, you haven't had my thoughts on the season yet. Because I think it's a vast improvement. I love season 27. Mm-hmm. I think it's one of the best seasons they've ever done. So, nothing but up for me, so.
Jared? How do you feel about this compared to the last one? You weren't that big of a fan of last season, were you?
No, I wasn't a huge fan, but I agree with you with the cast from last season being good. I think the thing coming into this season was when we looked at the cast, we were like, oh no, kind of, what is this? Like, so many of these people look boring. I think that was probably just to do with how little information we had to go on just from kind of their short intro videos. But I think everybody on this season has delivered as a cast, and we lost the boring people early, which I think helps. Or at least it was edited that way, that we weren't too invested in the people who went home early. But I think the legs themselves have been so much better. The challenges have been so much better. The suspense has been so much better, which you can't really pre-plan, but I think just everything has worked out better with more suspense on who's going home instead of, yep, they're gone straight away as soon as leg starts. 5 minutes in, you know who's going.
Yeah, I'll give my opinion again. You both seem to be at least on board with it. I think that season 26 had a far superior cast, which is really surprising considering the cast didn't know each other for the most part, and the teams that did know each other were kind of always sidelined. But I'm kind of torn because I do like this cast on season 27, but I just don't feel like we've really seen them in what we could have. I think that the teams are all kind of very much put inside a box, and Justin and Diana, this is the way they are, and we're not really seeing these different sides of it. We're definitely getting a lot more personality from the teams, but a little bit less of the race. I think the race, like you said, Jared, is way superior this time around. There's been suspense on every single leg, even as we talked about last week. When Tanner and Josh, the douche bros, obviously were out of it. There was still the suspense that we had Denise and James Earl, who were completely lost the whole time. So I think there's pluses and minuses. I think in the end, I'm probably going to say I enjoy this season more than season 26, but I really do love the cast of season 26 overall. I just don't see as many all-star teams this time around, and there's nothing against this cast. I just think they're shifting, but as we've mentioned the whole episode, there are so many little areas where they're kind of tweaking the show, and that's how I think I'm really hoping that this twist with the social media casting, that it's not just a big stunt like Amazing Race Family Edition or Blind Dating twist. because I think they're onto some things here that could just use a little bit of tweaking. So, strangely enough, despite the fact it's not my favorite season, Family Edition, Heart, says Rossi. But yeah, I mean, I'm optimistic if they can go forward like this. I just hope that this whole thing going up with season 27 doesn't sideline the show, and they do follow up with some of the things that they're onto this time. But we have, 2 episodes left to go? How many legs is only 2 episodes left now. So
hopefully no Final Four. You're still safe. Like, I hate that.
Yeah, which brings us really quickly. We only have like a minute or two here to wrap up, but really quickly, the preview for next week shows this big shocking end, and it's showing everybody what seems to be at the pit stop, and all the teams are reacting strongly. Do we have any theory as to what this could be? I'm hoping nobody has spoilers, but Rossi, any idea what's coming up?
Maybe it is this Amazing Race Outcast Edition. So all the teams from all the past from this season are fighting in a challenge at the pit stop.
Adam and Alan versus TMZ versus Tanner and Josh.
Yeah, and then whoever wins is the 4th team that races into the final leg. So we'll have another Final Four in the finale.
Jared, any theories at all? It looks like they're making a big deal about this.
Oh, what could they do? Well, they'll probably bring back Dave and Rachel to defend their record against Justin and Diana, and then bring them into the finale as the 4th team.
Yeah.
Oh my god, if they win another $1 million.
The only thing I was thinking was that it could have been a Final Four twist again coming up, but again, with the teams all seeming to react negatively, it's so strange. And I wish I had gone back and watched over it again, but I don't know if they showed us clips of every single team talking to Phil, so maybe there's somebody who has to be removed. I don't know, but we'll find out in less than a week. So
it's probably just another a twist recycled from Big Brother or Survivor or something that they're just branding into the Amazing Race.
Yeah. Great Big Brother twists on the Amazing Race. That's what we need. But Outcasts, there's a possibility, like you said, a Survivor twist. Redemption Island, that kind of works into it.
Exile Island, one of the teams.
Maybe they're all devastated that the Indian bride has divorced all 5 of her husbands after one night. But we'll find out next week, and you can tune into our episode if you don't want to watch Amazing Race. I don't know why you do that, but feel free to. Once again, thank you for joining us for your 2nd episode in a row, Rossi, or 3rd or 4th for the season. Thanks for being here.
Good to be here, and don't forget to send those tweets. Get better, Jamie. Send chocolate.
Yep, send money. I prefer the money over the chocolate. Not a fan of chocolate, but I guess I'm not the one who's sick, so how selfish of me to ask.
Wow.
Jared, are you going to be hashtagging Get Well, Jamie?
I'll definitely get behind that. Since I haven't been on the season much, I've got to sort of build up some reputation so I can be a sort of like Twitter doctor or something. There's something to go by.
And start a Twitter account for your dog and your bird, too. We have to have something for that. If
Sure.
you start something for what are the names of your dog and bird?
The dog is called Billy, and the bird is Jatia.
Jatia? Are you serious?
Yeah.
Survivor fans, Billy and Jatia are his pets. My hamster is named Parsnips. So I wish I had come up with something that... I mean, obviously it's a little bit more of a creative name, but you've got Jatia. Is Jatia just like Jatia on Survivor?
She is actually. She's loose on green, and she likes to throw her food on the ground, so it fits.
Well, hashtag Get Well Jamie, hashtag pick up your food Jatia. Anything here for us as Amazing Race Oz, but definitely join us next week, because I think this will be one that we'll all have something to take to say on it lives up to the promise. And that's it. We'll be back next week. Sorry for all the Noah fans out there, some fans of Jordan and Alex, but I think we'll work out better timing next week. Next week when we will speak to you on the plane.